A lot of aspiring writers are discouraged by a couple of things these days, especially aspiring film writers. They're discouraged by a reality where so many stories have been told on screen there seems to be nothing left to say. And they're discouraged by a bloated mass-market arena of mainstream film that seems to reflect that notion, where it's rare to go to a movie theater and be inspired by a story, truly immersed in its world, and to feel that for the duration of the movie, what you're seeing is real and not the same hobbled-together, formulaic, mathematically pieced-together film you've seen several times before, depending on the genre. Those jaded, aspiring filmmakers need movies like Chronicle. It's a reminder that while perhaps every idea has been put on screen in some shape or form, when a protagonist comes to life and the audience really believes it, when we're put in the moment and so invested in what happens to the protagonist that we're made to laugh with him, cry with him, be scared for him, and perhaps even be scared of him, that goes beyond, superpowers and superheroes and even the what would the real world be like with superpowers story has been told before. If you can take your audience past the initial premise to something much deeper, much more personal, that's powerful. And for me, that's what Chronicle does. Now, I'm not going to engage in any real in-depth story analysis for this review because, as always, when I review a brand new film, and I know it's been a while, the purpose is different from what I do with the Rewind reviews. I want to tell you whether or not I like the film and whether the storytelling was competent or not to spoil the whole thing and ruin the experience for anyone who might like to see it. But sometime down the line, I plan to give this a thorough look in Superhero Rewind because there's a lot to say. Chronicle can really be looked at on two levels. It's a story about three high school boys whose strength of character, integrity, and morality are challenged in myriad ways by their newfound superpowers, which they gain accidentally exploring a mysterious and unexplained hole in the middle of the woods. And it can also be looked at as an exploration of three traditional roles of characters found in superhero stories, and how they might fall into those roles naturally in a real-world setting. One is the intentional hero, one is the unlikely hero, and one is the tragic villain. And that's as far as I go. I'll leave it to you to discover which is which. The movie is smart at every level of storytelling. I find it easy to care about what happens to these characters even when they make morally questionable decisions, because as I spend time with them, I'm made to understand them. Gaining telekinesis and learning how to control it creates a strong bond between these three guys, none of which were close friends before, but now have something they can only share with each other. They struggle to decide what to do with their powers, how they should use them, and where to draw the line between use and misuse. Many of us love superheroes because we can imagine ourselves in their shoes. It's an enticing fantasy, imagining yourself with abilities no one else has and being able to save the world. No one imagines himself as the bad guy. I think there's a part of everyone who wishes he was more powerful, able to enact change on a grander scale. But the frightening part, and what Chronicle really explores, is that if we're honest with ourselves, we don't really know what we'd do. The idea is too fantastic, too outrageous to really know unless it actually happened to you. Getting superpowers is like suddenly becoming a billionaire or waking up one morning and finding yourself elected president of the United States. Sure, you can imagine it. You can think of all the things you'd like to do. But do any of us really know ourselves well enough to truly know what we'd do, what we'd become, how it would change us? Maybe it's more like the fateful moment where you have to choose between self-preservation and self-sacrifice. Someone's holding a gun at you and a stranger and tells you to decide which of you lives and which dies. What stuff, mentally, are you really made of? Being tested by an extreme situation is maybe the only way any of us really knows. Chronicle makes that situation becoming insanely powerful, and then uses that to create an intense character study that explores that, and also explores why their true colors are what they ultimately are. It's also careful to simply give the audience the facts and allow us to decide things like the classic nature versus nurture arguments for ourselves. The use of the first-person camera is the strongest I've seen so far. Less gimmicky than in Cloverfield, and more cleverly utilized than in Blair Witch. Instantly making this perspective easier to swallow is the fact that there are multiple cameras, not just one being carried through the whole movie that the director has to constantly try to make us buy as both capturing what we need to see, but also survives everything it goes through. The cameras here are woven directly into the character study. Andrew insists on filming everything. He's antisocial, deeply introverted, and analyzes everything. He has a terrible home life with an abusive father living on welfare, which is admittedly a little typical, and a mother dying of cancer. He starts out with no close friends, and he chooses to fixate on documenting his life. This whole obsession becomes central to his character arc, and it's not just there as a novelty. There are certainly places, though, where first-person cameras seem a little bit contrived, like a couple of scenes where Andrew and his father are arguing, and his father knows the camera is on. It's kind of hard to believe he wouldn't turn it off, or, considering how violent he is, maybe even smash it. And it's also a little convenient that Matt is interested in a girl with a blog who also seems to film nearly everything she experiences, and that he's spending time with both of them at key moments where we, the audience, need to know what's going on. That's a minor complaint, though, when the camera is used in such artistic and imaginative ways. The first-person perspective is the best tool the movie has to make us sympathize with these characters. We get to feel what they go through along with them. Again, I'm struggling not to give anything away, but the urgency and intimacy of this perspective makes us sometimes enjoy experiences with telekinesis, sometimes we're invigorated by it, sometimes we're terrified by it. I've rarely felt the gambit of emotions I did with this movie. At times it's furiously entertaining, especially early on when they first get their powers and use them to play pranks on people, like moving cars in parking lots and freaking out shoppers in a toy store. And then there comes a point where we go from that to something absolutely bone-chilling. It's a shift in tone, but the movie knows what it's doing. The fun we have with these people at the beginning makes us care about the drama and the danger that comes toward the end. The movie didn't cost a lot to make, and it really uses its resources well. There's some spectacularly realistic action toward the end, and a fair amount of special effects, but they're not flashy. It's really good minimalism. I love the crane work. When Andrew starts to get really good at his telekinesis, he starts moving his cameras with his mind, and that gives us some really unusual overhead perspective shots that you couldn't have in a movie like this without this sort of premise. As I said, I hope this movie inspires younger writers to not be afraid of smart scripts and to really use their imaginations to create compelling characters. It's directed by Max Landis, son of John Landis, who's only 26. He's a year younger than me. I find that very encouraging. A lot of what's here I've seen before, but it's incredibly fresh because of how it's shot and how invested I became in the characters. My complaints are minor. This movie had a real impact on me, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 4.